Hi, everyone, and welcome to the National Association Coordination Mid-Year webinar featuring a few of our association friends. We are just going to give people just a minute to log in. It's 1:59 at the moment, so we'll just give everyone a second to connect to audio, familiarize yourself with the Zoom webinar platform if you haven't already. There is a Q&A section where you can submit questions, and we will not be using any polls today, but you can use the chat at any time to chat me or anyone else in the room with us. So with that, I will, we can move to the next slide to get started. So good morning or afternoon, everybody. My name is Carrie Worthington, and I'm with the National Association for Regulatory Utility Commissioners, but on the project of the National Council on Electricity Policy. This webinar is recorded, and you can chat me any questions at any time or use the Zoom Q&A box to send in any questions. Relevant clarifying questions will be asked immediately, and we will, if we have time to get to the speaker immediately, we will aim to do that or leave questions for the end of the presentations. We have a few people to get through today. I was able to send the link to the meeting landing page and the presentation for today to the people who were able to pre-register. And once I kick it over to the next speaker, I will start to drop in the links for the presentation. But everything will be posted on the electricitypolicy.org website. And I will submit any unanswered questions to the panelists following up from today's webinar. So if you'd like to keep up with us, please join our listserv, and you can do that by creating a My NARUC account, or you can email me too. So with that, we can go to the next slide, and I will let you all know who is speaking with us today. We have a few of our colleagues from the other national associations. So we have first my boss, Danielle Seth-Burnett, from the Center for Partnerships and Innovation at NARUC. Then we have Dan Loft from the National Governors Association. Then Dan Shea from the National Council of State Legislators. And then Kirsten Burkloff from the National Association of State Energy Officials. And then finally, David Springy from NCEP. The National Association of Clean Air Agencies, Miles Keogh, was not able to be with us today. But I have a link for his website at the end of the presentation for you. So with that, we can go to the next slide. Actually, we can flip 2 slides. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat from the audience yet, which is great. So if this is your first time joining us for the National Council on Electricity Policy, we are a peer learning platform for various state agencies to learn about new technologies, policies, regulations, and market impacts on the bulk power system and for state resources. Currently, NCEP is working to discover more information on the transmission and distribution system intersection, and we are currently this year talking about planning. And again, we are at www.electricitypolicy.org. And then we also would like to thank the U.S. Department of Energy for its ongoing support of the NCEP, and NCEP is an affiliate project of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners that I mentioned before. So now I can introduce to you the National Council on Electricity Policy Executive Committee on the next slide. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank them for their leadership and guidance. They are the steering committee for NCEP, so we really appreciate their thoughtfulness with us. We also wanted to take a moment to thank outgoing Acting Consumer Advocate of Pennsylvania, Tanya McCloskey. She was very instrumental with working with us on our guiding principles, so we really hope that she enjoys her retirement. Also retiring is former Commissioner Sarah Hoffman, so we wanted to thank her for her service as well. She was with us since the beginning with the Eastern Interconnection States Planning Council, so we also appreciate her long tenure with this group and her service to us too. So if you see any of these folks, just let them know that we appreciate what they do for NCEP. We can go to the next slide. You may have seen some announcements to save the date for September 13th through 15th for the annual meeting and workshop. as I mentioned, this year we are focused on coordinated planning, and we're really looking to discover more about what the state role is with that, what planning capabilities exist, and what coordination opportunities exist. So we will be looking for state and system examples, and to finally have a discussion on next steps on the third day. So more information on that will be coming out within the next few weeks, but we wanted to keep you all appraised of saving the date. With that, we can move on to our resources slide. So we have the transmission distribution resource catalog. I counted it today. We have over 150 public resources and examples, so case studies from states and local governments of planning, operations, markets, and the T&D intersections. So also some RTO resources as well. We have 4 mini guides that have been available for quite some time at this point, but upcoming this year, we have, over the next 6 months, we're looking to conclude 3 mini guides the first on state and regional transmission operators, then engagement between PUCs and consumer advocates, and finally, engagement between PUCs and siting boards. And the last 2, siting boards and consumer advocates, we have a RFP out currently. It's the same RFP. They're listed together. If you, even though there's 2 links here, they're listed together on the same page. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and see if we can pull up our next speaker, who is Danielle Sastronette from the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. We can move 2 slides and pass it off to her. Danielle?
Thank you very much, Carrie. Appreciate you putting all of this together. It's a great opportunity for us all to hear from one another and ensure our members are aware of lots of complementary work going on among the national associations. We can probably skip ahead. I assume you all know that NARUC is the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, and our members oversee the utilities in each state. The Center for Partnerships and Innovation is the technical assistance team within NARUC. We build relationships, develop resources, and deliver training that provides answers to state commissioners' questions. There is a fact sheet on our website that covers most of what I'm going to review today. It gets updated 3 times a year, and you can reference it at any time. So please feel free to hop over there if you're interested in something more of a takeaway. Next slide. I'm planning to take a few minutes to talk about some recent resources that are newly available since we last talked in January, and also give you a preview about some forthcoming resources and projects as well. Specifically, I wanted to highlight in the smart grid arena, in March of this year, we provided a webinar around advanced metering infrastructure and how it can support unlocking resilience, and the questions that commissions tend to ask and be interested in when they review AMI proceedings and investment requests by utilities. That will soon be followed by an issue brief as well that will be posted on the link here. And I know that Carrie has made the slides available. You can click through all of these links through that PDF. We also released a cybersecurity for the smart grid questions for utilities. It says December here because that's when we finished writing it, but we released it after we last spoke to you all in January. And so that is a relatively recent document that's available for reference. A short kind of primer level guide to cybersecurity resources from NIST, and it concludes with questions for utilities. Also, since we last spoke, NARUC and NASIO concluded a multi-year initiative called the NARUC-NASIO Task Force on Comprehensive Electricity Planning, which was an effort of 15 states working collaboratively to identify new approaches and visions for comprehensive or integrated electricity system planning. They focused on how distribution system planning or integrated distribution planning might work from a commission and state energy office perspective, and how that could be aligned with more traditional integrated resource planning or IRP, and even transmission planning in some cases. One of the seminal documents produced from that effort is the Blueprint for State Action, which is available and guides any state, whether they participated in the effort or not, in how they can go through an effort to identify a vision and proceed to engage stakeholders and move forward with implementation steps that would help them realize that vision. There are also 5 examples for that kind of comprehensive electricity system planning vision. Those are called the cohort roadmaps, and those are available for reference. And there was a working paper produced that talks about what kinds of analytical capabilities would need to be available to realize the visions. So quite a few resources there. There's been a lot of traction from that, and we commend that to you if you are not already engaged in the effort. Also this spring, we conducted a regional training on integrated distribution systems planning with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Those sessions were all recorded. There were 6 or 7 of them. They are available on our website through the link here. And there were some fascinating discussions, so well worth your while. Just before the task force was released, we concluded a very important paper around stakeholder engagement from the perspective of public utility commissions, and produced this decision-making framework that profiles 11 different commission processes for more robust stakeholder engagement beyond traditional litigated proceedings, and talks about what kinds of decisions the commission would need to make, whether they are going to run the stakeholder engagement effort, they're going to task the utility, or seek to hire an independent third party. So that's a really valuable resource. It's not just relevant for commissions, also highly relevant to state energy offices, governors, advisors, and others who are interested in more stakeholder engagement in the energy and electricity space. Shortly after we all spoke early in the year, we released 2 papers. NARUC and NASIO collaborated on these around microgrids, one on user objectives and design approaches, and another on funding and financing options for microgrids. And then finally, I wanted to profile a recently released document around recruiting and retaining a cybersecurity workforce. We are NARUC, so we wrote this from the perspective of public utility commissions, but again, there are lots of details and information in there that would be relevant to other state agencies who are looking at cybersecurity issues and trying to figure out what kind of expertise they need. In this particular document, there are even position descriptions that could be used to help create new postings. So really action-oriented guide there. Next slide. As many organizations these days, we host lots of webinars on a rolling basis. Sometimes those are closed just to members, but other times they're open to all NARUC members and stakeholders, which includes the NCEP audience. Primary among those is our CPI Innovation webinar series, which is held one Thursday a month in the afternoons. Some of the most recent topics were the evolving commission workforce, and that profiled the paper I just mentioned. An initiative on cybersecurity in solar projects, featuring a great discussion from Kirsten Verklaas from NASIO and one of our colleagues at DOE about a joint NARUC-NASIO cybersecurity for state solar project that we are in the midst of. And then a very well-received webinar around data for the public interest, specifically focused on energy equity, with some very engaging speakers and a nice set of resources that provided additional opportunities to educate ourselves about energy equity and how data can be used to support efforts to strive for greater equity. Those are all available on the innovation webinar page, the recordings, presentations, and also in some cases, additional resources. We have hosted a couple of microgrids state working group webinars. These are jointly run by NARUC and NASIO, one on the 2 papers that I mentioned, and another around strategies for resilient microgrid deployment in particular. We recently held a webinar on heavy-duty truck charging and what kind of infrastructure needs there are, what kind of rate designs could support this kind of fleet electrification on the medium and heavy-duty side. And that was through our electric vehicle state working group. Those resources are posted. And we've recently begun a new effort around nuclear energy for the NARUC audience in partnership with DOE. We are posting those webinars as well. One that was a lay of the land, state of nuclear challenges and opportunities, just last month. And last week, one on an introduction to advanced nuclear. So if those are topics of interest to you, you can find those recordings through the links that are listed here as well. Next slide. And finally, I wanted to profile some upcoming projects, forthcoming resources. We have 2 more webinars scheduled as of the moment in our innovation webinar series, and we'll soon begin scheduling for the fall. Later this month, there's a webinar around balancing the clean grid, reliability, and renewable energy. We'll talk about inertia and other topics. You can register for that through our website. We'll also be profiling virtual power plants and moving from theory to practice. That will be in mid-August. Not written on the slide, but the reason we're skipping July is because NARUC has its annual summer policy summit in July this year. That will be a hybrid event. It will start virtually on July 14th and 15th, and then move to an in-person and virtual combined event the following week in Denver, Colorado. Registration is open for that, and we can put the registration link in the chat in case folks are interested. We are currently in the midst of a virtual training series that is specifically designed for NARUC, NASIO, and the SUCA members, though anyone in the NCEP community is welcome to join us. This is in partnership with Energy Systems Integration Group around bulk power system issues. What are some of the fundamental issues from a technical perspective for a non-technical audience? The topics include resource adequacy, system balancing, system stability, and impacts of distributed energy resources on the bulk power system. We've held 2 sessions already, and those recorded sessions are available. And there are 2 more sessions, one happening 2 days from now, and then the final one, June 22nd. If you are interested in joining us, you're welcome to register. Just send a chat to me or to Carrie, and we will get you the registration link, since that one is for members only. We're also working on a paper out of our carbon capture, storage, and utilization partnership on the role of state utility regulators in just and reasonable energy transition, focused specifically on regulatory approaches to economic impacts and economic development, profiling the situation in coal related to coal retirements. So that paper will be available no later than September and features some great research into different statutes and approaches in utility commission space around this very important issue. And we are also working on 2 cybersecurity publications that we thought might be of interest. One is a partnership with NARUC, NASIO, and the National Governors Association around cyber partnerships and information sharing. That paper will be released this summer, and then there'll be a roundtable to further advance the topic. And we're also concluding a paper around cybersecurity insurance and how cyber insurance is used as a risk management tool. That paper will also be available this summer. And with that, I don't think I have any more slides. Oh, thank you. Our sister organization at NARUC, NRI, the National Regulatory Research Institute, is hosting a book talk or a retrospective discussion with Professor Paul Joskow about his classic book, Markets for Power. This is happening through registration on the NARUC Summer Policy Summit website. It should be a very exciting discussion. We've had NRI has put together these book talks for the last few NARUC meetings, and they've all been quite insightful. So we would welcome your participation in that, and you can register for that through the link that is already in the chat. I will turn it back to Carrie to feature our next speaker, but thank you all so much. Feel free to submit any questions or requests for follow-up in the chat or the Q&A.
Yep, and all of our speakers are very friendly over email too, if you ever wanted to just send them an email. So thank you so much, Danielle, for your time with us and for the excellent overview there. Next, we have Dan Loft from the National Governors Association, and he will describe some of their projects and their areas of focus. Dan?
Great. Thanks so much, Carrie, and good afternoon, everyone. Like Carrie mentioned, I'm Dan Loft, I'm the Energy Program Director here at the National Governors Association. Next slide. So for those of you who aren't familiar with NGA, I think most of you probably know us at this point, but we are the nonpartisan voice of the governors federally and a source of state policy and solutions through our Center for Best Practices, which is where my team and I sit. So we do support all 55 state and territory governors on a wide array of energy policy topics. Going to the next slide. For my team and I, our primary audience is the governor's energy policy advisors, many of whom sit directly in the governor's offices. And of course, some of them also sit in state energy offices. And it's been great to be able to be on these calls and very much appreciated our collaborations with all of our N group colleagues. So this is just a quick snapshot of kind of a broader mission, so to speak, but we really do support governors on a wide range of state-based energy policy solutions, working toward a wide array of outcomes. But not to belabor that, going 2 slides ahead. Thank you. So wanted to start off by talking about 2 new resources that I think would be of interest to this group. The first is a new report called Addressing Cybersecurity for Critical Energy Infrastructure Through State Governing Bodies. This is a paper that explores how states can address vulnerabilities facing cybersecurity of the energy sector through statewide governing bodies. So these are groups like task forces, working groups, councils, or other cross-entity coordination mechanisms. Now, many of these at the state level aren't specific to energy or critical infrastructure, but increasingly we are seeing states carve out modules or components of these to directly address some of the threats that we're seeing to the energy sector. And so this paper again explores how governors and states are making use of these governing structures to address some of the threats and vulnerabilities that we're seeing in the energy space and to foster collaboration with energy industry and others to work towards solutions. Next slide. The next report that I'll highlight is another new release of ours, State Insights on the Water Energy Nexus and Policy Ideas to Achieve Greater Savings. This is really a deep dive into the energy water nexus and the funding and financing, education, technical assistance, and other policy mechanisms that governors and states can deploy to improve efficiency and performance of these systems, particularly where they intersect. So I highly encourage you all to take a look at that as well. Wanted to focus much of my presentation into some of our upcoming projects and areas of focus, since there are some opportunities for you all to engage. So going to the next slide. There are a couple of upcoming projects that may be of interest to this group, and especially while we're in this virtual world, it's easy to share these more broadly than with our members and encourage others to join as well if they look to be of interest. The first is on regional energy markets. So we've been hearing quite a few questions from our members about those markets, how they intersect with state and governor's energy policy objectives and how they can either support or in some cases hinder those objectives. So basically, where are those intersections and what is it that governors and energy policymakers need to know about regional energy markets? So what we're doing there is developing 2 things. One is going to be an online resource guide, focusing primarily on descriptive information about those markets, comparative analysis across various RTOs and ISOs, and just general guidance for how governors can work with and interact with those markets. And then part of that later this summer, we will have a virtual training series or webinar series diving deeper into the systems, kind of a 101, 201 sort of a thing. We also have some more direct work in the nuclear energy space, working to support governors and states on their policies in that arena through a few mechanisms. One is a learning collaborative that we are in the process of developing and looking to kick off, in which we'll work with a cohort of states to foster some good cross-state learning on the topic, and some cross-state exchange, and then also some dedicated technical assistance as needed. So if any if anyone does have questions about how they can either support nuclear energy in their states or address concerns related to nuclear energy. We are happy to help with that. And I mentioned the Energy Water Nexus paper, so I will skip over that. But another product that we hope to release in the coming month or two is a new energy efficiency primer for governors focused on the role that energy efficiency can and will play in a modernized energy system. So as governors and states look to advance clean energy, decarbonization, resilience, or electrification goals, and implement the transformations that we know need to take place to achieve what are in some cases very ambitious goals, what role can energy efficiency play to facilitate and enable those objectives? Next slide. We also have a wide range of activities in the energy security and resilience space. I won't talk to all of these in the interest of time, but we'll highlight a couple of them. So on the COVID front, this is another resource that, fingers crossed, will be coming out later this week. We have a new paper diving deep into the disconnection moratoriums that we saw, the utility disconnection moratoriums that we saw take place earlier in the pandemic. And as many of those expire, the memo explores some of the solutions that states can deploy to ensure affordability for customers while addressing some of the economic stability concerns of utilities moving forward. So we are looking forward to releasing that. Another upcoming resource that I'd like to mention is one that we're doing in collaboration with NASIO, and it's a new workshop and resource guide on state energy resilience planning and funding. So this will be coming out, well, the resource guide will be coming out later in the summer by September. It will dive deep into wide range of energy resilience projects, funding mechanisms, and the role that energy is playing in some of the new cross-cutting statewide resilience planning efforts that we are now seeing across the country. And the workshop will take place later in the summer, likely in August, and will provide some deeper exploration of those topics and hopefully some good opportunity for cross-state and cross-entity dialogue. The last I'll mention is one that I talked about last time we did one of these sessions, which is our new state resilience assessment and planning tool. We released it late last year, but continue to see interest from the states, including one that has adopted the tool to inform its climate resilience planning efforts. So if anybody does have questions about that, I've included a link here at the bottom and welcome offline discussion there. So moving to what I think is my last slide. Also wanted to mention that our Governor's Advisors Energy Policy Institute is going to take place virtually again this summer in late June and mid-July, providing good, again, opportunity for engagement and collaboration amongst our members. But given that we're virtual, please do contact me if you have questions about this event or attending, and it's something that we'll hopefully be able to accommodate. In addition to broader state collaboration, we'll have deep dives into clean energy and climate policy, energy security and resilience, and then special session on energy workforce, economic development, and recovery. So with that, move to my last slide, which I believe is just my contact information. There it is. That's how you can reach me. And I welcome either questions here if we have time, or if not, please feel free to reach out by email or phone. So thanks so much, Carrie.
Thank you, Dan. And we received a request for the Water Energy Nexus paper link. So I dropped that in the chat, and I will also just drop in if you missed the link to today's presentation. I'm just going to drop that in right now as well. And we will move to the National Council for State Legislators with Dan Shea. He will go over some of their recent resources and their important dates coming up. So Dan, the floor is yours. Thanks for being with us.
Great, thanks, Carrie. Thanks for having me. If we could go to the next slide, please. My name is Dan Shea. I am a senior policy specialist in our energy program. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the National Conference of State Legislators, we are a bipartisan organization serving the more than 7,000 legislators and over 30,000 legislative staff that serve in this nation's states, commonwealths, and territorial legislatures. Our activities involve research and information requests on specific topics of interest, either from specific state legislators or from committees. We provide technical assistance and training to legislators and staff, opportunities for policymakers to exchange ideas. So our in-person meetings, although not so many in-person meetings this past year, we have been, like everyone else, transitioned to virtual formats and bringing our legislators together to provide them with those opportunities for interchange in virtual formats this year. And then finally, we have a DC office where our sort of partners in that office lobby on behalf of state rights on the Hill. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So since the last presentation, one of the big things that we've done is published a paper on energy storage for a modern grid. It is a fairly comprehensive overview of the technology and state policy options, with the caveat that we serve over 7,000 state legislators. Over around 1/4 are new legislators every 2 years. So we do have to maintain this balance of providing higher level information for those who are just entering office, sometimes without much energy policy experience at all, in addition to providing the sort of in-depth work that material that some of our more energy focused legislators are looking for. So that paper does, I think, a good job of that. We worked with Jeremy Twitchell from Pacific Northwest National Lab. We collaborated with him on many of the technical characteristics and sort of applications for storage technologies, and provide a sort of state perspective for legislators on their role in developing and establishing storage related policies. Another report is an annual report that we do, sort of looking back at the previous year and forward to the current year. So we look at the trends that we've found and seen while tracking legislation over the year. In the previous session, as you'd imagine, 2020 provided us with, there was sort of a lot of momentum in the build up to March with policies that had been building over prior sessions and years, and that sort of abruptly stopped. And we saw a significant transition to obviously pandemic related measures. And so we highlight that in the document, in addition to sort of going over the trends and the policies that we're anticipating seeing a sort of renewed interest in this session and the upcoming sessions. We also had a public-private partnership on disaster mitigation and recovery that released 2 reports in the first quarter of the year, pretty much. So the first is a 2019-2020 state legislative report on natural disasters that covers, it's beyond just energy. It includes transportation and building infrastructure, and a variety of other areas, but with an energy focus as well. And complement to that is a sort of state policy recommendations that came out of this partnership, and the sort of collaborative work that went into this. So you can view all of these. There are links provided in the slides. Next slide, please. In addition, we have 2 new resources on emergency planning around energy emergencies. The first is a very specific look at the state legislative role in planning and response. And so that really looks at where existing state policies and how the legislature enables our partner organizations, the agencies, the state agencies and regulators that carry out state policy, really enable them to do their work and establish the planning and response protocols that assist in a rapid and quick restoration service. The second one is a tribal state coordination and planning and response, and this looks at sort of the ways that certain states and tribes have worked to facilitate and increase communication and collaboration between those government entities in response to energy emergencies specifically. We have published 2 magazine articles. We have an in-house magazine, State Legislators magazine, in which we published 2 stories. One, Texas energy crisis, what is resilient power worth? And this was, as it sounds like, it looked at the situation in Texas and the topic of resiliency and the evaluation of resilient power. Then we have a second article on state lawmakers driving electric vehicle policies in the current session, which highlights trends we've seen in state legislation on electric vehicle deployment. Then we have 2 newsletters that we maintain and send out to our members. Our plugged-in newsletter is more broadly focused on energy, relevant federal news and state action. The second is the News Reactor newsletter, which is focused on nuclear specific news, both in relation to nuclear power, nuclear waste, and the cleanup of the nuclear weapons complex. Next slide, please. So additional activities that we have engaged in recently. We, as an organization, we for the first time did this sort of Policy 101 series where every Friday in February, every policy division at NCSL presented a sort of 101 for primarily new legislators and staff that outlined the sort of status or gave an overview of the policy area, trending topics and policies. And so the Energy Policy 101 took place in February, and you can see a link to it there at the link. The Natural Resources and Infrastructure Spring 2021 webinar series. So the Natural Resources and Infrastructure Committee is a larger standing committee that we maintain, and we host an annual webinar series of which the energy program has contributed one already on April 29th, Energy You Can Count On, State and Federal Efforts to Enhance Energy Resilience. I will say it was less focused on the federal side of things and more on state action and industry action as well. So that webinar you can find through the link to the Spring 2021 webinar series. We also have an upcoming webinar, Energy Security, Planning for Every Threat, upcoming on June 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And the registration link is there, but it is going to take a more holistic, broader view of a sort of all threats, all hazards approach, including a look at natural disasters and cybersecurity, a bit of an emphasis on cybersecurity following the Colonial Pipeline incident. So Beyond that, we have legislative tracking databases that we maintain. Our primary one is the energy database, and it covers all energy-related state legislation, and you can look through that and sort of narrow down by topic. We also have a COVID-19 database that, as an organization, we more broadly have tracked COVID-related legislation. And we actually, I forgot to put it on here, but have an energy storage database that's a little bit more interactive that we just developed and published this past quarter. Looking ahead, we have our NCSL base camp, which will be virtual this year during the dates when we normally host our legislative summit. That's August 3rd through 5th. And our legislative summit, we have sort of postponed and moved to November 3rd through 5th, which will be in person in Tampa, but a little bit smaller than our normal event. And you can find more information on both in the link there. We maintain two regular groups of state legislators from across the country, the Energy Supply Task Force and the Nuclear Legislative Working Group. We've been maintaining sort of virtual operations with both of those groups. And we will be hosting our Legislative Energy Horizons Institute in October from the 19th through the 23rd in DC. Normally this is a two-day meeting. Well, sorry, not two-day, two-part meeting. I think it's 5 days overall of fairly intensive training and collaboration with the University of Idaho, in which we train legislators primarily on that serve as chairs on utility committees to give them the sort of technical and background to serve their states well. Next slide, please. Okay, and with that, I'll just sort of leave you with my contact information and some of our more popular links. You can find all of our recent and not so recent publications at the link here. Our newsletters you can access in addition to our database, and federal updates that we provide our members. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Carrie.
Thanks, Dan. Quick question. This energy I'm sorry, can we go back a slide? The energy legislative database, did you say you have a new tracker for storage?
We do, and I can put a link to it in the chat for people to access. So it's a storage specific database that is more interactive. If you're familiar with our regular database, it's much more interactive than that one, utilizing a different platform, and yeah, it's intended to allow people to really navigate through the various types of policies a little bit more easily.
Great. I look forward to that link, and congratulations on your recent reports. And I'm also very happy to see that the Lehigh will be in DC this year. We've been following that for a few years, so glad to see that that's back on in person.
Yeah, it's good to have that back on track and back in person. A little bit more condensed this year, but yeah, should be good to get everybody back together and get that moving again.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And we will bring up our next speaker, Executive Director of the National Association of, the Program Director for the National Association of State Energy Officials, Kirsten Verkloff from NASIO. So Kirsten, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And thank you so much for inviting us to be here today and talk a little bit about our program objectives and what we have going on. And it's great to hear a lot from all the others too, and all the collaboration that's going on. So next slide, please. I think most of you know NASIO, but just quickly, we're the National Association of State Energy Officials, and our membership includes the 56 governor-designated energy office directors from each state, the District of Columbia, and the territories. We are organized in 6 regions. We have a committee structure, which I will talk about just in a second. And we really try to provide our members with information on issues of particular concern to the states, and then also serve as their voice in Washington, D.C. vis-a-vis the federal government. Next slide, please. So we have a wide area of program areas. I'm not going to touch on all of them, but I just wanted to highlight a few. Obviously, there's the electricity committee and program. So each of our program areas has a committee that leads it. And then we have energy financing, buildings, energy security. We have projects in the solar space. We work on technology innovation, transportation, and state energy planning. And then also we have cross-cutting issues such as resilience, energy jobs, the response to COVID-19, economic issues, economic recovery, et cetera. Just wanted to highlight kind of two areas that's been in focus lately is our equity committee. We've started working very significantly on equity for a few years now. That was initially a task force, is now a committee, and there have been a lot of discussions on how to evaluate and elevate the value of equity in policymaking and how to provide equity or equitable community engagement. State energy office is very interested in those topics, and there are a few states leading the way. So this has been an ongoing area of focus for NASIO. And then energy security, we've worked a lot on the COVID-19 response. As this is winding down, we're now kind of shifting our gear towards other response efforts. Hurricane season is coming up, and we've of course had a large response effort to the Colonial Pipeline cybersecurity incident over this past few weeks. Next slide, please. So just focusing a little bit on some of our program activities. We've already heard Danielle mentioned the Cybersecurity Advisory Team for State Solar, CATS project that we do together with NERUC. We're entering kind of into the second year of that project. The first year was really focused on education of our members, but also understanding what their needs are in terms of the state energy offices and the public utility commissions. We have a large advisory group that's been meeting periodically where we bring together our members, NERUC and NASIO members, as well as representatives of the federal government, the industry, utilities, et cetera. And that's been really a really fruitful dialogue. And we did a needs assessment with our members, and based on that needs assessment, really delving deep into what they are looking for this project to accomplish. We developed a roadmap where we're really focused on what kind of tools we can provide for our members going forward. And it really kind of ranges from education to providing support of stakeholder engagement, to providing understanding of some of the standards and policy options. So that will be implemented over the next year, but we have a newly minted website, and I will put that link in the chat. One of the projects we did for the first year was literature review, and it really is kind of a compilation of the relevant literature out there and putting it into context for our members. And what are the basic resources? What are some resources if you wanted to delve deeper into some of the more technical aspects? So hopefully that will be also useful for some of you on the call. On our transportation project or program, we continue to work on regional EV infrastructure deployment support. We have the REF West initiative, which is out in the West. And then we also have a new kind of compact on EV infrastructure in the Southeast as well. In terms of energy emergency response and resilience planning and funding, Dan from NGA has already mentioned the two upcoming projects there. We have a resilience workshop on funding and planning. And then also we will have a guide on some of the potential opportunities for resilience funding. In that kind of program I mentioned already, we've had a lot of energy emergency response efforts going on. We actually have an upcoming webinar on the severe summer weather outlook. That's something that NASIO does kind of biannually for the winter and the summer. And I'll make sure that I put the chat and link because I don't think I've included it in the PowerPoint presentation. And then we also there are very focused on BRIC and supporting our state energy offices on BRIC funding applications. The first round has been coming to a close, and we're just BRIC or FEMA is evaluating the applications currently, and we're kind of supporting our members as we look towards the next round of applications opening later this summer. And our Grid Interactive Efficient Buildings Working Group, which Danielle also mentioned already, we do that together with NERUC. And there we continue to work on some of the publications that I'll mention in a minute that we've put out. And we've also kind of relaunched our energy efficiency and emissions impacts page, linking tools and resources how energy efficient can be considered and quantified for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and criteria of pollutant emissions. The State Microgrid Working Group, Danielle also mentioned, another collaboration with NERUC, and we continue our webinar series. I'll mention that in a minute, what the next upcoming webinar is, and continue to work on publications. We had a really great kind of engagement with some of our members. Wisconsin, for example, has now a new microgrid project they launched as a result of the State Microgrid Working Group. So it's really nice to see our members engage there and kind of inform each other's efforts on supporting microgrid development. And then last but not least, the NASU-NERUC Task Force on Comprehensive Electricity Planning. I won't go into much detail because Danielle covered that, but that was a great time, great effort in February when we launched our products that Danielle so aptly described. And I think that was a really great project that led to a lot of state action, and it's exciting to see our members put that into practice, what we've worked on for 2 years. Next slide. So our most recent publications, I'm going to touch on a few of these. We have a very significant workforce focus at NASU. So there are a couple of publications. One is the diversity in the US energy workforce that came out in April, and the other one is wages, benefits, and change, both looking at kind of what is the state of play in terms of diversity, as well as wage development and benefits development in the energy workforce, and a lot of kind of ideas of what state energy policy makers could do to improve some of these aspects, especially as we see that, you know, some of the not so diverse aspects of the energy workforce can be improved upon, especially looking kind of at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We also, as I said, work a lot on electric vehicles. So we have 2 publications just coming out. The electric vehicle charging needs assessment looks at what is kind of going on in the West, and part of the Rev West project, what kind of demand charges and rate structures are present, and what would need to be changed in order to improve and support EV deployment. And then we also have a plug-in electric vehicle policy impact rubric, which looks kind of at what some of the can allow jurisdictions to self-assess the strength of their light-duty plug-in electric vehicles, and it kind of is a scoring matrix. And there's 13 policy categories, and they're based on 3 tiers based on their impact on light-duty PV adoption. So this is intended for state government offices, such as our members, as well as local governments, utilities, regional government bodies, and other stakeholders who are interested in supporting plug-in electric vehicle adoption. And then on the building side, we had 3 publications. One is on manufacturing, housing in rural America, really looking at one of the key segments of the housing sector that is comprising 10% of new detached homes, and kind of what potential options are for states to improve energy efficiency and improve some of the energy blueprints of those houses. And then we also have a couple of GAB-related publications, the state and local building policies and programs for energy efficiency and demand flexibility, and then the bringing more value from building energy operations and upgrades, monetizing demand flexibility in public and institutional buildings. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, just a quick snapshot of upcoming events and publications. We have the NASU regional meetings are going on currently. Those are all virtual. I've put the link for our events website in there. There's definitely different dates for different regional meetings, so take a look at that. And then we also have, as I mentioned, the next Microgrid State Working Group webinar coming up, Microgrids for LMI communities, on June 24th. We already discussed the NASU NGA Resilience Workshop, and then the NASU BRIC Workshop will be August 24th and 26th. Our annual meeting will take place October 13th to 15th. It'll be in person in Portland, Maine. And then there'll be 2 upcoming webinars on GAB-specific items that we will post on the website. We don't have the dates yet. We also have a couple of upcoming publications, 2 microgrid webinars, one on resilience and one on renewable energy. 2 publications that are kind of providing an overview, one on carbon capture, storage, and utilization, and one on hydrogen. And then with NARUC together and NGA, sorry, I should have mentioned that, there'll be a cyber information sharing white paper coming out soonest. So with that, here's my contact information on the next slide. Happy to take any questions. I'll drop a couple more links in the chat. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. And we will be sure to use those task force materials that you all developed over the past 2 years for our planning meeting for NCEP this September. So thanks for laying the groundwork there. Finally, we have David Springy, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates. I don't believe David has slides, but he should be with us over video. And with that, David, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is David Springy, and I'm the Executive Director of NCEP. For those of you that don't know, NCEP is the state statutory consumer advocates. We're the consumer advocate part of the regulatory process at the state level. We have 59 members operating in 44 states. And you know, we try and stay active as we can, but we are the smallest of the national association. So I always appreciate the opportunity to kind of tag along with NARUC, NASIO, and NGA and NCSL. So we appreciate that. We really are, I think, in some respects, more of a consumer of your products. And I could assure you that all of the studies and links and things that are being presented today are also going out to all of my members every Friday in an update. So we do share, and we do appreciate the opportunities to participate when invited in the programs that you were doing, especially as Danielle mentioned, the bulk power system training is a great opportunity for our membership, and we appreciate the opportunity to be there. I saw one of my office heads asking for the registration in the chat, so very, very, very nice. We don't produce papers in the same vein as the other national associations. We're just not big enough to do that. We don't have the bandwidth to do that. But we have in the past done a series of DOE and LB&L training. Those training videos are available if anybody was interested, or some basics around grid technologies are on the NCEP website, just nsuka.org. There's a resources tab with all of our past training videos. We did a 4-part training series late last October, but we've really been pretty busy focusing on COVID and trying to support our members as we dealt with some of the challenges at the state level around COVID. Also on the NCEP website on our front page is NCEP policy around COVID, letters and other advocacy that we have produced to support that. We are in the process of sort of re-standing up the DOE papers and training series that we have. I don't have anything to report on that yet, but hopefully next time we do this, we'll actually be a little farther down that road. It sort of took a second backseat while we were doing COVID. So we don't have a lot to show at the moment, but I do want to make one quick note. We are actually having our mid-year association meeting next week. Actually, I'm frantically in the literal sense, frantically planning that. But if anybody's interested, again, nsuka.org, you can link right into that. We really have, I think, an excellent meeting coming up. We've got panels on transmission, natural gas and electric grid resilience around the winter storm, lead service line, water replacement, telecommunications, public safety, FERC Order 2222, consumer protection panel with some of our office heads to talk about COVID issues. We have an accounting panel on performance-based rate making, and we have a lot of federal guests. We're still locking in a few, but Allison Clements, for Commissioner Allison Clements, is going to be dropping by. Both Kelly Speaks-Bachman and Pat Hoffman from DOE are stopping by to have a conversation in the process of hopefully locking up someone from the FCC. So, you know, yeah, if you're interested, that's happening next Monday and Tuesday. So we'll be full-time doing that. With that, I know we're out of time, and I'll cede the floor back to everybody. But again, I want to reiterate how much we appreciate the information that the other national associations make available, and our ability to share that with our members. It's very important.
Thank you so much, and we really appreciate the partnership we have with NCEP too, so thank you for that. I'm not seeing any questions come in, so I'm going to just quickly jump to let you know that, we can go back for a second. I mentioned that NECA is not able to be here with us, but their website is forcleanair.org, so you can check them out. I'm not seeing any Q&A, so we can close now so that everyone who has a 4 p.m. deadline can get off. So again, I appreciate everyone being here, and I will be in touch with the recording. So, or you can just follow that meeting page. So thank you for your time today, and appreciate everything. So see you next time. Thank you.